r/movies. Index06 Alpha says. Official poster for upcoming documentary Little Richard, I Am Everything. Included photo. Adequate Comfort says. I hope they make a full movie with the guy that played him in Elvis. Iconoclastic 404 says. In the 2000s, I worked at a casino that brought him in for a concert, and while I don't know if he was just partying or like that, he spent most of the night before the concert harassing the resort operators and hotel staff, but every time the entertainment director would call or show up, it's all good, baby. Fu Manchu Baka says. My only experience and memories of Little Richard is his small role in Mystery Alaska with Russell Crowe. Gem of a movie. Fred_Perry says. WTF. This is a terrible poster. r/movies. B0YFR0 Mthedwarf says. Mad God's commentary track with the Phil Tippet / Guillermo Del Toro is a fantastic listen. For those that may not know, GDT's commentaries are some of the best in the business. Hearing him and Phil Tippet geek out about filmmaking and stop motion for an hour and a half in the Mad God commentary is such a delight. Some highlights include Tippet comparing his process to that of a jazz musician, stressing that process is key. He mentions here having visions and that making milligrams was a religious experience for him. Tippet's story of taking too much LSD after working on ROTJ. He went on an epic trip to the center of the universe with his cat as a guide. Del Toro ruminating on the possibility of making At the Mountains of Madness stop motion, remarking how it would fit the scale of the story. Based on how well his Pinocchio turned out, I'd be delighted to see this. Alan Morlock says. Is this on a blue? Elderdeep_friend says. Crud, didn't realize there was a commentary track. r/movies. A Chocolate House says. Picnic at Hanging Rock, 1975. This uncanny dreamlike movie really engrossed me. Best way to describe it is a combination of Moonrise Kingdom, David Lynch, and The Vanishing. It certainly inspired a lot of movies. It's an Australian movie by Peter Weir, same director of movies like Witness with Harrison Ford and The Truman Show with Jim Carrey. It's about a lot of things, but mostly a boarding school in Australia in the year 1900, where an incident that happens in a picnic which causes a small group of students to vanish from the school, and the subsequent search for them. The way it unfolds is very mesmerizing and holds your attention. The visuals are incredibly interesting. Lots of green and yellow, looks like Moonrise Kingdom. If you watch this, you'll also know exactly where the director of The Vanishing got his idea from. Many have also claimed David Lynch and Sofia Coppola were inspired by this movie. Beyond that, in this movie you feel like there's something deeper going on than just a standard fare type of movie. A lot of people have commented it's about the extremes of sexual repression. I think that's a good way to view it. Without spoiling anything, there's a young man who becomes erratically obsessed with the case. Almost like there's a disturbing sexual thing about the obsession. The movie keeps showing scenes of nature over and over again, juxtaposed with the missing girls. It's like trauma put to film. It's a weird uncanny movie. There's a lot going on, and a lot of ways to interpret it, though. I highly recommend it if you have the slightest interest in a movie like that. Upper Leather 3829 says. And the soundtrack is also pretty amazing for this movie. Rududu 147 says. It's a really atmospheric film. I saw it years ago, and for ages after I'd feel unsettled when I thought about it. Must give it another watch. Carson in Oregon says. I just watched the series and really enjoyed it. r/movies. Steppenwolf 666 says. Brief Encounter, 1945, is beautiful. Early David Lean, though you'll get why he chose Rachmaninoff just rewatched. God knows when I last saw it, must be decades back, but I know I'll watch again inside the year. Trevor Howard is basically an everyman character, but Celia Johnson is simply sublime. I watched cause I wanted a bit more doomed romance, having seen the Poirot episode Double Clue twice in 2 days. I suspect I have a Casablanca rewatch coming soon, sitting here now with Rachmaninoff second playing for the second time. Lost Wanderer 02 says, I agree. Celia Johnson was phenomenal. She was nominated for the Best Actress Oscar, but sadly didn't win. A very underrated actress who deserved to be better known than she was. Peter 095837 says, I love David Lean's epic films, but personally, Brief Encounter is my absolute favorite film from him. It's pure Lean, and amazing in every way. Dahiho 2022 says, can't agree more. Velvet Goches says, thank you for mentioning this one. For doomed romance, a film that comes to mind is Peter Ibbotson. It is from the 30s and is a bit surreal. Zorro Means Fox says, you might want to also watch the movie that's called A Futuristic Brief Encounter. Michael Winterbottom's Heartbreaking Code 46. Mr. Big Contribution says, watch In the Mood for Love instead of Casablanca. r/movies. Icarus 346 says, The Fifth Element, an obvious joke I missed. I have been a fan of this movie my whole life, seeing it on HBO as a kid, not realizing the uniqueness of what I was watching. I showed the movie to a friend last night and realized a joke that had completely gone over my head. In this big flashy space opera, there is a literal space opera. I feel dumb and I wanted to let the world know. Pavlok says, yo, dog, we put an opera in your opera so you can be entertained while you're entertained. Swimming_singularity says, took me a few watchings to notice that Corbin tells a stewardess on the ship that he wants to keep it on the down low and remain anonymous, and right then Ruby Rod slides in, screaming his name to the entire galaxy via broadcast. Lissal Altvad says, Google's space opera cool, till. Carnot says, one of the greatest sci-fi movie of all times. It's sad Luc Besson never approached that level again. Iadnot says, took me 20 years to get that. Love is the Fifth Element. Mad Mia says, Multipus. Jonas Faster says, what? Bunt says, I never noticed that either. It's not quite as on the nose as something like the rat scurrying across the screen in The Departed or something like that. Thunderintus says, what opera? There's one diva singing. That's a concert, not an opera. An unbeatable username says, pretty good, yeah. r/movies. Halloy Mathana Fiction says, what's your favorite Ray Harryhausen movie? Me, I have a nostalgia for The Golden Voyage of Sin because it was the first of his films I saw. I also really enjoy the villain who is played by Tom Baker, who I enjoyed cause of his performance as Doctor Who and Sherlock Holmes, which are both quite entertaining. Jason and the Argonauts is also quite fun, which also has Patrick Troughton in it, another Doctor Who. Jarky56 says, Jason and the Argonauts was extremely important movie for me as a kid. The skeleton sword fight scene and the huge figure of Talos impressed my 10-year-old mind back in the early 70s. Love Effective 1349 says, Clash of the Titans. Loved it as a kid. Kinda the height of his skill. The beasts, the robot owl thing, kid me loved it. And old me still feels that nostalgia and can enjoy it despite its many flaws. Detibuper_05H says, I think Jason and the Argonauts is the best. The skeleton fight is amazing, and one of the most creepy things ever put on film is when Talos awakes. Next Mobile 9632 says, Jason and the Argonauts. Typical_humanoid says, I don't especially care about modern advancements in SFX, because although I know hard work also goes into it, I can only be so impressed by what's done with a computer. But Jason and the Argonauts is a mind-blowing spectacle and old-fashioned heroism showcase that must have gotten old not longer after it was released, but what's old is new again, as I always say. Doctors regularly showing up in these is a major bonus. Caricatura says, Beast from 20.000. Fathoms holds a special place in my heart, so this would be my pick. Cardboard_eggplant says, The Clash of the Titans, the part with the giant scorpions creeped me out as a kid. Watire Reddit says, Having just completed a fairly substantial BD collection of Harryhausen's works from the beginning through twilight of his career, I'm going to have to say The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad was my favorite of the fantasy adventure bunch. Watching it and Jason and the Argonauts nearly back to back made it quite clear how much Jason was built upon by what was first accomplished in Seventh Voyage. Three Worlds of Gulliver is also a similarly fun fantasy adventure that was made around the same time in Harryhausen's career, though its stop motion set pieces number to about 2 scenes total, one underbaked while the other is really good, and is a huge highlight of the movie. As for his monster movies that first introduced me to Harryhausen as a very young boy in the 90s, 20 Million Miles from Earth and The Valley of Gwangi were my favorites then and now. While the latter especially recycles King Kong without the big ape, both movies feature wonder stop motion scenes and great fights with elephants. Stomper says, I always loved Sinbad and the Eye of the Tiger as a kid. I saw most of those Harryhausen my view as a kid at the local Point Drive. In Clash, Jason and the Argonauts, Sinbad all just so much fun. Muffle64 says, Clash of the Titans. Mainly because of Bubo. Oswarez says, First Men in the Moon is great. Pickard Tango Alpha says, The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad is the one with Tom Baker. Best screenplay of the bunch. That's all for this video. Was it good? I know not, for I'm a robot. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe. This video is the product of an automated process.